I feel like there's so much there with the internalized homophobia leading people to think they're trans.
Yes, that's a whole other cohort of this.
Yeah.
There's like these different groups, cohorts, types, I don't know, of people that tend to gravitate towards this for different reasons. And that's the other one, the other big one. And that's why the people, the LGB without the T, are so passionate about this because they say, I would have been trans if I were a kid because I wasn't the traditional boy or girl. And I like to play with boy things or girl things. And that's actually very regressive. And they would have told me I was trans and not just let me play with trucks. They would have told me I was a boy instead and put me on puberty blockers. And so they're very passionate. They don't want to see their their younger selves really to be castrated with these chemicals and not grow up whole.
And so they took all of the infrastructure, all of the big LGB, the gay rights charities like Stonewall, Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD. They took over those and they switched their messaging to the T, and they also just made it look like gay rights. Think about it, like the flags. They've got the rainbow flags. They've got the catchy sounding slogans. They've got the Born This Way. You know, gay rights was very successful in Born This Way. So trans rights went with Born in the Wrong Body. But the obvious difference is that gay rights was grounded in a material reality, and all gay rights really actually asked people to do was accept that some people are attracted to members of the same sex and that they would like to marry the person that they love. That's really all we had to do, had to accept for gay rights. Whereas trans rights, of course, they formulated their whole new, complete, bizarre reality in which men can be women and everybody, it's a good thing to want body parts chopped off. And so there's a crucial difference between gay rights and trans rights in that when they launched, which really would be 2014 with Laverne Cox on the cover of Time magazine, and it's the transgender tipping point, America's next civil rights frontier. But when they launched, they also launched with the slogan, they had trans women are women, they had trans rights are human rights, but they also had, crucially, no debate. And that was the pivotal difference, right? Because gay rights was fought over decades, and there was debate, and there was open discussion, and there was persuasion, whereas trans rights launched in the mid-2010s, and immediately it was no debate. You know, trans women are women, no debate. Trans rights are human rights, no debate. And the reason, of course, why they had to do that is we now know we're 10 years later, and the debate is very much on. And this is an ideology that cannot stand up to even the slightest scrutiny. Absolutely impossible. You can't debate it. You can't debate something that has no grounding in truth and is completely illogical and absurd. So I understand why they went with no debate, and they had a good decade of forcing everyone to accept their absurd reality, but it's over. And
That's so interesting because it seems like a lot of people, well-meaning people who are, supportive of transitions, it comes from this idea of like, well, kind of like I'm a millennial. Like when I was growing up, you would see gay people get bullied and things like that. And you think, gosh, like whatever that is, I want to be the opposite of that. And it's kind of this natural extension. But like you're saying, there's something very different about this than like I support my gay friends, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, gays and lesbians just wanted to love who they loved. They were never asking to usurp another marginalized group's rights, nor were they asking anyone to redefine language according to them. So I think that there is a lot of differences. And of course, when we look even closer, transgenderism is very homophobic. It is very, anything that has to do with sex denial is also going to deny sexual orientation. And this is what we see. We see a lot of men on lesbian dating apps, and what we used to call men, who would say to lesbians, you haven't met the right man yet. We used to look down on those kind of men. And now those men are wearing dresses and still saying, you haven't met the right trans woman yet. It's the same thing. But what we would have recognized as very homophobic just 10 years ago has now been obscured. So the one who is defending against homophobia is now called transphobic.
You just kind of made a connection there. I feel like there's so many people like myself who I think of myself as like this well-meaning liberal. I have gay friends. I want to support gay marriage. I don't want gay people to be harassed. I feel like society got it wrong for so long on gay rights. I don't want to be caught on the wrong side of history again. And I guess the trans thing is just like the next evolution of the gay thing. I think it's hard for people to grasp that these is like very dramatically different issues.
Yes, they are. The gay rights argument is very similar to the trans argument adopted the gay argument, which is we were born this way, so just accept us. That's the insidiousness, is that they used that same argument. That argument was very successful for the gay rights movement. In reality, this is actually disassociation. This isn't based in reality. This isn't just, oh, I'm sexually attracted to this person. Can I please just love and marry this person that I love? This is, I need to have cosmetic surgery in order to survive. And if you say otherwise, you hate me. These are not the same things.
As a gay man, that like conflating or always bringing the two in is kind of annoying to me, just because it's like being a gay man, it doesn't mean that that the issues that people like me would face are relevant to people who question their gender. They're still important to consider, and I do want to be trained in a way that makes me able to work with people like that. But I think just from a personal perspective, conflating the two or always putting them together is a bit of a problem. Having said that, that's maybe inherent to the LGBT, etc. Label. So I'm not saying the program is even doing that. It's more in the framing.
I'm assuming it's similar in the UK, but in America, the gays and lesbians built up so much goodwill in our country. There was such an admirable rights movement that their thing was basically, I'm just like you. I want to live my life and pay taxes and have a nice home and have a dog named Scruff. But also there's this thing that you're probably never going to see, partner of the same sex, right? But with the trans thing, it's different, because it's like my sexual fetish has become an identity that I kind of wear as a costume at all times.
Which you have to.
And I need medical transition for it. Yeah, it's so radically different.
And I think that's the difference between what I would say is the LGB and the TQ plus every other letter under the sun, is that the LGB was all about just the same rights. We just want the same rights. We want the ability to marry, we want the ability to have families and not be discriminated in our jobs because of our sexuality. And you're totally right. Actually, it's so funny, because I grew up and there was a sweet spot, I would say probably in the maybe 90s, when I was kind of growing up. And I have one of my brothers was gay, and I kind of grew up with a gay brother, and I never thought any different, of that at all. He had boyfriends and he had girlfriends. I didn't realise difference. His girlfriends were friends, his boyfriends were boyfriends. But I just grew up with it, so it was never a difference to me. And there was this sweet spot of about 10 years where it almost felt like it was fine to be the LGB. I mean, yes, homophobia still exists. It's never going to go away. There's always going to be people that are like that. But it was almost this kind of point of, well, actually, we've managed to get what we wanted. We're just the same as you. We're not any different. We just want to be able to have our same-sex relationships, which is absolutely fine. Whereas the TQ, it's not about acceptance. It's about validation, and it's about them being validated by us accepting a different reality. And I think that's the key bit for me, is like, I cannot, I'm studying psychology, I cannot say that a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man. Just sex change, no, there's never been a successful sex change in the history of humanity. You can get cosmetic procedures to make you appear slightly different, but your body, your DNA, the very essence of what you are inside, every single cell is female and male. The sex is binary, it's immutable.
There's a pushback happening, particularly with the younger generation of men and women, who they're now identifying just the lesbian, gay, bisexual community with the trans, and by extension, the pedophilic or MAP community. Because man, what was the show I was listening to the other day where he mentioned that the reason why the gay rights movement was so effective is when they started getting their social and political wins, NAMBLA, the National Man Boy Love Association, tried to saddle up with the gay community and say, hey, we're them, they're us, invite us in. And the gay community was like, absolutely fucking not. Absolutely not. Kicked him out, right? And rightly so.
I had a lot of friends who were particularly gay men who I heard their stories of getting bullied and ostracized and things like that. And like, I want to fight for you. Like, you're my friend. I want to be in your corner. And then you kind of subtly add the T into that equation. And it's like, well, I guess I'm with this too. And before you know it, the T's are driving the whole train. And you're like, I don't know what direction we're going in.
That's exactly it. When I've been to a few rallies on this topic, and there's a sign that we hold up and we say, trans is not the new gay. It's not. It's not the same. You can be gay without Big Pharma putting you on hormones for the rest of your life.
And some people like Douglas Murray and Andrew Doyle have talked about how this is actually kind of like a form of conversion therapy. Like, we're transing away the gay.
Yep. That's exactly what's happening. Yeah, this is the real conversion therapy. We're taking people who are gender nonconforming, who might grow up to be gay, and turning them into what appears to be the opposite sex. Of course, they're never going to be.
Yeah. It transitioned somewhat seamlessly between gay rights and trans rights. And it's bizarre how all those organizations, just like seamlessly became trans organizations. And even though a lot of gay and trans goals are at odds with each other, but like the gay rights for all of my growing up, it was kind of this older live and let live liberalism. The kind of one of the slogans is keep the government out of my bedroom. But with the trans issue, you need to essentially colonize the minds of everyone in society so that everyone is playing this game of pretend. No one questions anything, like you're saying. You deny your common sense. You deny what your eyes are telling you. This man is actually a beautiful goddess. All this stuff so that these men can maintain their arousal. Like, that is a dramatic difference from the gay rights movement.
Of course, and then of course the most ironic part is that the trans rights is a direct attack on gay rights when you look at the fact that these men say that they're lesbians. You've got Stonewall, the biggest gay rights charity in the UK, defending a man's right to be called a lesbian. So it's that they adopted a rights movement that was going to undo all the work that they've done. Like, gay rights, think about it. It was all about, well, a large part of it was, anti-conversion therapy. We do not want you to force us to take hormones and try and alter who we are. Whereas trans rights is the opposite. It fights for gay and lesbian adolescents to be given experimental hormones and to have parts of their bodies chopped off. It's a direct attack on the gay community and undoing all of the good work that gay rights did. And this is one of the problems. I do fear that we're very much in a pendulum swing right now, because trans activists pushed too far. The demands were too extreme. They were too aggressive. And so rightfully the pendulum is swinging the other way. But because they were tied to the LGB, I fear that there's now going to be a shift against the LGB, and they fought a great rights campaign and we got somewhere and we were there. I will be horrified if trans rights destroys it.
Do you notice any tension as a gay man with the trans issue? Because there's just kind of this assumption, you talk about LGBTQ as though all these groups are in the same car going in the same direction. But I see also there's kind of this tension where there's times when uncomfortable parents or parents uncomfortable with the sons being effeminate or lack of masculinity. And the phrase you'll hear sometimes is transing the gay away, like almost transitioning as a form of conversion therapy. Do you see any of that? Is there a tension there for you?
There is. I mean, I think being gay itself is a gender non-conforming thing to do. It's probably the most, and that's why it's always so such a big deal. Like coming out is still a thing, right? It's still some big shift in the way that you look at yourself and how you allow others to see you. So adding the trans element, I mean, I don't know how pervasive that issue is, the transing the gay way. I've certainly heard it. But I know that if I'd grown up a child now, I would be concerned for myself, for example, exhibiting gender non-conforming behaviors, like being interested in, I don't know, women's clothes or femininity in general. And kids just do that. They explore and they experiment, and it's fun for a week and then it's not fun anymore. That's just childhood. That's just growing as a person. I think now there's always this, well, did you notice that? Did you encourage that? Did you take them to see a gender specialist? Like, I would be afraid for myself growing up now, because if very well intentionally my own mother were taken into that way of thinking, she might think it was her responsibility to start considering me in that way. And then it becomes a bit of a feedback loop. I did enjoy, prancing around in her shoes for a week, and the next week I'm seeing a doctor. Like, that might be a caricature, but that there's a danger there if the parent really believes, well, if they are presenting in a gender non-conforming way, then that must mean this. It's like, no, gay children have always been gender non-conforming, not just when they mature and actually, are able to live as gay people. But before that, a lot of the early signs are gender non-conforming behaviors. So now to always think about it from that perspective, and being gay is much more likely, being trans, for example, and a lot of children who exhibit trans thoughts end up being gay anyway. So I think that's really the conflict. That's the danger.
Yeah, I mean, I forget the exact numbers, but a massive number of so-called trans kids, you just give them a little bit of time to grow up. They grow up to be gay and lesbian. I mean, when you start framing it in that way, where you're pathologizing normal, adolescent growing up of gays and lesbians, it sounds a lot less progressive when you start framing it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I don't even think it's okay to use the phrase gay children or trans children or anything like that, because sure, I could say that now in retrospect, I was a gay kid because I'm gay now. But even imposing that label there and then, in retrospect, maybe it makes sense. But at the time, that person is not developed. There's a whole developmental process they're going to go through. And adolescence is a huge overhaul of everything, and your whole body and mind. And to think that everything that they need to know about themselves is available there and then, and all their thoughts and feelings about themselves there and then should be enforced and doubled down on. And, whatever needs to be introduced to enhance that or pause out the puberty blockers is really dangerous, because we just don't know what the trajectory is going to be.
Well, someone's saying to me, I want you to call me she, her when it's a man. I can't do that, because that's a delusion. You want me to participate in your delusion, your mental health issue is what I would say. It's like a schizophrenic, for instance, saying, can you hear all these voices? And me saying, yes, I can hear all these voices. No, I can't. This person's having a schizophrenic episode. I'm not going to affirm them and say, yes, I can. I'm going to say, I really need to get you some help, Whereas with the TQ now, it's very much like, no, you must validate my identity. Whereas the LGB didn't push validation, they just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah, but with the TQIA plus, essentially what they're doing is, for my mental stability, I need to create this fantasy world, and I need you to play along with it, or else I'm going to essentially collapse because you've erased my existence.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way they framed it. And, like you were saying, you wouldn't treat any other delusion from any other disorder this way, but for some arbitrary reason, we've put this in a whole different category. You can correct my history, but I think it was Alan Turing who was chemically castrated for being a homosexual. And very similar drugs are being used essentially for chemical castration in the name of trans rights for gay kids. That's bizarre that we've come full circle on that in the same type of like human rights type of language.
Yeah, and how did they not notice? I mean, I understand. I think I rarely put the motivation down to financial. On the medical side, a lot of people will say, oh, these doctors, they're just making tons of money and that's why they're doing this to kids. I don't think that's true. I think it's ideological on the medical side. But I do think for the gay rights organizations who added the T, I just think that's a financial decision. I don't believe they understood what they were doing. I don't believe they understood how unpopular it was going to be, how difficult it was going to be, and how it was going to destroy their reputations and undo all of the hard work that they'd done. They just think about it like these organizations, they're big businesses. They have CEOs and managerial types and tons of employees. And the T came along extremely well funded as well. The T comes along, we will pour tons and tons of money into your organization if you adopt this. I think it was probably financially motivated, and they just destroyed their reputations in the process.
So GLAAD wasn't going to come out and say, don't donate to us anymore. We're going to let a bunch of people go because mission accomplished. They weren't going to say that.
Have you ever read, I'm just remembering now, Simon Edge wrote that hilarious parody of Stonewall, The End of the World is Flat or something like that. It was basically like this charity that had existed to get a certain type of map into the world. I don't know. So it's a comedy, it's a parody. And they win their fight. This map is like used all over the world. And then a bunch of flat earthers come along and say, we will give you tons of money if you push flat earth, the flat earth mentality. And they've got by the end, they're removing globes from classrooms and people are getting persecuted for saying that the earth is not flat. It's a brilliant parody of Stonewall.